Three strangers climb into a machine the size of a shed and drop out of the sky into 1937. A history professor who has never fired a gun, a Delta Force soldier who has fired too many, and an engineer who would rather be anywhere else, flying the thing that keeps them alive. They are chasing a stolen time machine and the man who took it, and they think their job is simple: stop him from breaking the past. It is not simple. The man they are chasing is not the villain. The villain is a name he keeps whispering in their ears, a secret society called Rittenhouse that has been steering America since before America existed. And the man carries a journal, written in the professor's own handwriting, by a version of herself she has not become yet. Every week they land in a real moment of history. Every week the moment is just the room where the real story happens. Because the real story is three people slowly becoming a family. A war being fought across all of time, and a rule none of them can break. You can go back. You just can never come home to the life you left. This is the entire story of Timeless. Lucy Preston gets denied tenure, then goes home to her dying mother and her sister Amy. A bad day. It gets stranger when Homeland Security agent Denise Christopher pulls her into a hangar and shows her a hole in the world. A time machine called the Mothership, built at Mason Industries, has been stolen by Garcia Flynn, a former NSA asset now labeled a terrorist. Lucy is drafted as the historian. Her teammates are soldier Wyatt Logan and Mason's engineer Rufus Carlin, who pilots the smaller prototype, the lifeboat. They jump to the Hindenburg, 1937, expecting Flynn to cause the disaster. He wants to prevent it, so he can blow the airship up on the return trip instead and kill a cabin full of powerful Americans. Destroy the country, as Lucy puts it, in the crib. They befriend a reporter named Kate Drummond, a woman who was supposed to die in the original fire. They hijack the airship and force it down. Everyone lives, even as a stray bullet from Flynn's man turns the Hindenburg into a torch. Then Flynn shoots Kate Drummond dead. The woman history wanted gone. Before he goes, Flynn shows Lucy the journal in her handwriting and tells her to ask Christopher about Rittenhouse. Christopher says she has no idea what that word means. Rufus, meanwhile, quietly hands Connor Mason a recording he secretly made of the whole mission. Nobody explains why. And then the cruel part, the part that becomes the shape of the entire show. Lucy comes home. Her mother, dying of cancer yesterday, is healthy. A gift, except her sister Amy is gone, not dead, erased, like she was never born. And nobody remembers her but Lucy. There is a man in the house named Noah, who says he is her fiancé, and she has never seen his face before. She saved a stranger in 1937 and lost her sister for it, and this is only the first stop. Christopher hands the team a mission that feels less like rescue and more like sabotage. Flynn has gone to April 14, 1865, and joined John Wilkes Booth. His plan is not to change the assassination, it is to widen it. Modern weapons for Booth's conspirators, and a night that kills not just Lincoln, but the Vice President, the Secretary of State, and General Grant. Decapitate the country in a single evening. The team argues about whether they even have the right to stop it. Who are they to protect a timeline? Lucy, working under the name Juliet Shakesman, charms her way in beside Robert Todd Lincoln and lands a seat at Ford's Theater for the play. Flynn, disgusted that Booth won't touch a modern gun, does the ugly thing himself. He takes Booth's place and shoots Lincoln. But the team splits up to save everyone else. Lucy protects Grant. Rufus covers Johnson. Wyatt reaches Seward. The wider plot dies. Booth still gets the blame, still gets hunted down, and most of history holds its shape. The cost lands back home. Because of what they changed at the Hindenburg, Lucy's parents never met. Her father married a Hindenburg survivor's granddaughter instead, which means the man who raised her was never her father at all. She is unraveling one thread at a time, and every mission pulls another loose. Rufus tries to quit spying. He tells Connor Mason he is done making secret recordings, and Mason reminds him exactly who paid for his education and who can take it back. Both men know the word Rittenhouse. Neither will say it plainly. Rufus is being squeezed by something he can't see the edges of, and the audience starts to understand that the recordings are not for Mason at all. Lucy shows up late to her own engagement party and corners her mother Carol about the truth of her father. Before she can get an answer, the fiancé she doesn't know, Noah, sweeps in with a warm hello, and she has to smile at a stranger who loves her. Christopher gives Wyatt an order with a knife in it. Kill Anthony Brule, Rufus's old Mason co-worker, who was taken when the mothership was stolen. It plays as a hostage rescue turned execution. Nobody tells Rufus his friend is on the list. They land in 1962 Las Vegas, a city where the government tests atomic bombs in the desert like a floor show. Flynn is blackmailing Judith Campbell, a woman close to President Kennedy, using intimate photos because her connection to a general opens the door to a nuclear facility and a plutonium core. In the middle of the mission, Rufus gets the gut punch. Anthony is not a hostage. He is with Flynn on purpose, and he swears the two of them are trying to destroy Rittenhouse. Anthony seems to hand Rufus the core, and Rufus throws his body between Wyatt and his old friend, refusing to let the soldier pull the trigger. Then the trick. The core they carry home is a fake. Flynn slipped out with the real one, and the team drove away thinking they had won. The personal wound this week belongs to Wyatt. He arranges for a telegram to be delivered decades later to his wife Jessica, a message thrown down the river of time to keep her alive in 2012. When they get back, Jessica is still dead. Time did not bend for him. He covers for Rufus anyway, hiding that Rufus spared Anthony, because whatever else is coming apart, these three are starting to protect each other. Lucy tells Noah she needs room to breathe and moves back in with her mother. She keeps building a life around a man she is trying to want. And out in the Nevada dark, Flynn and Anthony dig up the real plutonium core, buried in the sand, so they would never have to risk carrying it through time. They are not just running from the team, they are building something. Gia, Rufus's colleague and the person he clearly cannot stop thinking about, finds Flynn by tracking the power he burns charging the mothership. Clever. Not clever enough because he slips the net again and lands them all in Nazi Germany, 1944. The team assumes he means to hand his stolen nuclear material to the Nazis. Wrong again. His plan is to kidnap rocket scientist Wernher von Braun and deliver him to the Soviets, which would gut America's future in the space race before it starts. Help arrives from an unlikely corner. A British naval intelligence officer named Ian Fleming, the man who will one day invent James Bond. Together, they get von Braun's defection to the Allies. Around the spy craft, the people keep growing. Wyatt coaches a terrified Lucy through the fear, telling her to find something to fight for so her hands stop shaking in the field. Fleming and Rufus trade quiet lines about whether spies can ever trust each other. Rufus confronts von Braun, who shrugs that morality only slows down invention. It is the closest thing the show has to a thesis, spoken by a man who built rockets for monsters. Back home, there is a joke and then a threat. The joke: their whole misadventure has birthed a brand new James Bond film that never existed in the old timeline. History is silly putty in their hands. The threat is heavier. Lucy hardens. She tells Christopher and Mason that she wants her sister Amy back, and that helping her find Amy is now the price of her cooperation. She is done being polite about it. Rufus, meanwhile, does the math on Anthony. The stolen plutonium was never for a bomb. Anthony is building a permanent power source, a battery that could run a time machine forever. And when Rufus finally refuses to keep spying on his own friends, a man steps out of the dark, says the word Rittenhouse without saying it, and tells him what happens to his family if he stops. The noose does not loosen, it draws. Wyatt is on the way out. A superior officer tells him his failure to put Flynn in the ground means he is about to be swapped for another soldier. Then Flynn fires up the mothership one more time, and Wyatt gets a last mission to March 1836, days before the Alamo falls. He was raised in Texas. He knows this one in his bones. Flynn bribes General Santa Anna into attacking 3 days early, and he murders Colonel William Travis before Travis can finish the letter that history remembers, the victory or death letter that rallied a revolution. The team is trapped inside the mission with doomed men Bowie and Crockett, watching a Mexican army raise the red flag that means no mercy. Even Flynn looks sick at it, because in the real story, the women and children were let out before the end, and now they may not be. The fighting drags Wyatt into his own past. He admits he once survived a crossfire that killed his men, that he left them there to die and got a medal for living. The guilt has been driving him the whole time. He wants to stay and die at the Alamo, like it is a debt he owes. Rufus and Wyatt dig an escape tunnel to the aqueduct. Lucy sits down and rewrites Travis's letter in her own hand, then puts it in the pocket of courier John William Smith, who carries it out with the women and children. Different words, same fire. History holds. Wyatt almost refuses to leave until Lucy tells him the truth, that she and Rufus need him, not the soldier, him. That is what finally moves him. Home again. The order to replace him still stands, and Lucy and Rufus talk Christopher out of it. This is the episode where the trio stops being co-workers, and in a small quiet moment, Lucy's mother Carol finally writes down the name of Lucy's real father and presses it into her hand, a gift that is about to turn into a trap. They chase Flynn to 1972, and the first spark of Watergate, thinking they can beat him to the famous gap in Nixon's tapes. Instead, he captures them because he already has the tape. He plays it, and there is President Nixon talking about Rittenhouse out loud. Then Flynn makes an offer that is really a leash. Find a mysterious dock that Nixon mentions, or Wyatt dies. The pressure comes from home too. A Rittenhouse agent leans on Rufus to reach a contact back in 1972, and that contact gives one order: destroy the dock. Rufus is now taking commands from the enemy through 2 centuries at once, and he still cannot tell his friends why. And here Flynn finally becomes a person instead of a boogeyman. He tells Wyatt his origin. He found out Rittenhouse was secretly funding Mason Industries. Following a lead from the informant everyone knows as Deep Throat, Lucy and Rufus trace the trail to a Black Liberation Army safe house and learn the truth about Doc. It is not a thing. It is a person, a former Rittenhouse member who carries the entire membership list in his head. They rescue Wyatt and get Doc to safety. Then the show twists the knife in a way only this show can. Lucy goes to meet her newly named biological father, Benjamin Cahill. She stands near him, close enough to touch, and she leaves without introducing herself, having no idea that the father she has been searching for is the same Rittenhouse man who has been threatening Rufus this whole time. The web is not out there in history. It is inside her own blood. This time, Flynn does not run. He crushes. His men sabotage the lifeboat in 1754 at the ragged start of the French and Indian War and leave the trio stranded with no way home and no technology to fix it. No rescue coming, just 3 people and a dead machine in the wilderness. Rufus does the only thing he can. He writes a message, seals it in a bottle, and buries it, gambling that the Mason team will dig it up in the present. A note thrown 250 years downstream. The 3 are captured by the Shawnee, and their chieftain, Nonhalema, orders Lucy and Wyatt executed but spares Rufus, seeing that a black man in this century did not come here by any free choice of his own. It is a quiet, heavy moment the show refuses to smooth over. Rufus talks her into freeing his friends, and they make for Fort Duquesne, where he scavenges the parts he needs to bring the lifeboat back to life. In the present, Mason's people find the bottle, but the ink has almost vanished. Gia, refusing to give up on Rufus, reconstructs the few surviving words and feeds the lifeboat the navigation data it needs to jump home once the repair is done. Stripped of everything, the 3 of them have to actually rely on each other, and the trust that had been fraying finally knits back together. Gia, back home, admits she has feelings for Rufus, and you want it to be simple for them, and you know it won't be. Christopher, smelling something wrong, asks for surveillance on Connor Mason, and Wyatt tells Lucy the thing that matters most this season: stop letting a journal write your life. Choose your own path. Their whole mess of a stranding even gets logged by history as a UFO sighting, the Pennsylvania Orb incident, because of course it does. July 20th, 1969, the moon landing. Flynn slips into mission control in Houston to sabotage Apollo 11 and leave 3 astronauts to die in the dark. Rufus corners Anthony over stranding the team back in 1754, but Anthony vanishes the instant mission control loses contact with the capsule. Digging into a local computer, Rufus finds what Anthony planted: a denial of service attack buried in the mainframe, a modern weapon that 1969 has no idea how to fight. So he and Lucy go find the one mind that can get them in: mathematician Katherine Johnson, whose brilliance opens the door. As they scrub the virus, Anthony and one of Flynn's men jump them. Rufus kills the henchman. Anthony runs, and the fix goes through. The astronauts come home. History gets its giant leap. Wyatt, meanwhile, is trailing Flynn and watching him do something that makes no sense. Flynn walks up to a secretary named Maria Tompkins and her little boy Gabriel in a park, then disappears. Wyatt tells Maria the man is a Russian spy, but Flynn sneaks into her house and injects the boy with epinephrine to stop a severe allergic reaction, saving his life before slipping past Wyatt one more time. Then the reveal that reframes the man they have been hunting. A secret file back home lays it out. Maria Tompkins was Flynn's mother. Gabriel was his half-brother. Flynn did not come to 1969 to sabotage anything personal. He came to save his own family, a child who would grow up to matter to him. The terrorist keeps turning out to be a man protecting people he loves, and the team keeps being pointed at him like he is the disease instead of the symptom. The wrongness of the whole mission is getting harder to ignore. 1934, the dust and desperation of the Depression, and Flynn is hunting an object this time instead of a person. A unique gold necklace, a key tied somehow to Rittenhouse. The trio arrives right in the middle of a bank robbery and runs straight into Bonnie Parker and Clyde Clyde Barrow, and Lucy spots it at once. Bonnie is wearing the very key Flynn wants around her neck. Lucy and Wyatt help the outlaws slip a gunfight with the police, and Flynn both. Rufus is not so lucky. He gets arrested and interrogated by Texas Ranger Frank Hamer, then cut loose, and Hamer starts squeezing gang member Henry Methvin to find where Bonnie and Clyde are hiding. At the hideout, Bonnie explains the key. Clyde gave it to her as an engagement gift after stealing it off Henry Ford himself. Then Methvin shows up, and so does Rufus, whose cover as a friend of the gang falls apart when he is exposed. Clyde kills Methvin once Rufus reveals the betrayal. Hamer's posse and Flynn close in together. In the shootout, Flynn snatches the key and gets away, just as Bonnie and Clyde are cut down in the ambush that history always had waiting for them. The famous ending holds. The team could not save them, and in truth, was never meant to. Back home, the walls keep moving. Connor Mason warns Benjamin Cahill that Christopher is getting dangerously close to Rittenhouse, not knowing Christopher already has Cahill under watch. Everyone is spying on everyone, and the audience can see the collisions coming before the characters can. Rufus, exhausted from being pulled in 3 directions, finally picks a side and agrees to work with Christopher against Rittenhouse. It is the first time he has an ally who knows the whole truth, and Flynn takes his prize, the gold key, and fits it into a hidden clock mechanism, and the clock opens, and inside there is a letter. Christopher is so scared of another timeline change that she hands Lucy a thumb drive holding everything about Christopher's own family to be kept in the lifeboat where history cannot reach in and erase it. That is how much these people fear waking up to find someone they love was never born. The team follows Flynn to 1780, the day Benedict Arnold means to hand West Point to the British. Washington's men capture them, and Flynn walks in holding the letter from the gold key. It reveals that Arnold was a founding member of Rittenhouse. Then Flynn offers a deal that changes the board. Help me take Arnold, and I will give you the mothership and the name of the man who murdered Wyatt's wife. The enemy is offering the team everything they want, and the terrible thing is that it makes sense. Posing as defectors, they grab Arnold at the British border, and he tells them Rittenhouse was founded by the astronomer David Rittenhouse. Arnold leads them to the man himself. The assassination goes wrong fast. Rittenhouse sees through it, murders Arnold, and Rufus has to save Wyatt and Flynn from the same fate. Flynn kills David Rittenhouse, but Rittenhouse's son, John, a boy, escapes. Flynn hunts the child down and gets ready to kill him, to cut the whole rotten tree off at the root, and Lucy stops him. She will not let him murder a child, even to end everything they are fighting. It is the line she cannot cross, and it costs her. When the boy slips away in the confusion, Flynn takes Lucy captive, drags her aboard the mothership, and vanishes into time before Wyatt and Rufus can reach the door. Halfway through the season, and the historian is gone, alone with the man she has been chasing. Wyatt and Rufus have one thought now: get Lucy back. Flynn has taken her to the 1893 Chicago World's Fair, where he means to assassinate 3 Rittenhouse industrialists: Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, and J.P. Morgan. The 2 men follow, and Flynn springs a trap so nasty it belongs in a horror movie. Wyatt, Rufus, and 2 civilians end up locked inside the World's Fair Hotel, the building history calls the Murder Castle, run by the serial killer H.H. Holmes. Out at the fair, Lucy and Flynn grab escape artist Harry Houdini and force him to break into Edison's office to plant a bomb. Houdini, to his credit, stops Flynn from killing the industrialists, then throws in with Lucy and rushes to save Wyatt and Rufus at the hotel. Lucy realizes too late that one of the men trapped with them, a guest calling himself George Henry, is Holmes. Just as she gets caught, Wyatt gets to her first and kills Holmes, which is its own quiet change, because in real history, Holmes was captured alive and hanged. They say goodbye to Houdini and the architect Sophia Hayden and come home whole, the 3 of them together again after Lucy's stretch alone in the past. It should feel like relief. Rufus, hardening by the week, records a flat threat aimed straight at Rittenhouse and hands it over to Mason, no longer a scared man reading his lines. And then the phone rings for Wyatt. It is Flynn. He finally gives up the name of the man who killed Jessica, and he leaves a dark seed behind. You could go back, Flynn says. You could erase him before he ever touches her. He is dangling the exact thing the show has spent 10 hours teaching us you must never do, and he is dangling it in front of the one man too wounded to say no. Wyatt drives to San Quentin to look Wes Gilliam in the eye, the man Flynn named as Jessica's killer. He needs to know if it is true. Lucy is coming apart in a different way, waking from nightmares about her erased sister Amy. And Rufus gets his own quiet knife. The news that Gia is being trained to replace him as the lifeboat's pilot in 6 months. Everyone is being told in some small way that they are expendable. The jump is to 1882. Flynn saves the outlaw Jesse James from the bullet history had ready for him, then recruits James to guide him deep into hostile territory towards someone the mission needs. To track them, the team brings in 2 legendary U.S. Marshals, Bass Reeves and Grant Johnson. But Rufus catches the thing he has been dreading. Wyatt means to kill James himself, over Jessica, and the mission is bleeding into revenge. Flynn and James reach the home of Emma Whitmore, a former time machine pilot who stranded herself in the 19th century on purpose to get away from Rittenhouse. After Flynn and Emma leave, James ambushes the team, cutting down Grant Johnson with Flynn's assault rifle. Wyatt wounds James, and then Lucy does something cold and shocking. As James stands there, unarmed and surrendering, she shoots him in the back and kills him. The gentle professor from the pilot just executed a man. The past is changing her too, and not toward the light. In the altered record, Reeves gets the credit for the kill. Home again, Rufus tells Mason and Christopher that Emma is alive out there in history. A loose pilot Rittenhouse would kill to control. Mason catches Gia hacking secret video logs about Emma. And at a bar, ruined and quiet, Wyatt asks Rufus for help with the one thing he swore he would never do: steal the lifeboat, go back, save Jessica. The rule that governs the whole show is about to get broken by the people who know it best. Wyatt and Rufus go rogue. They steal the lifeboat and jump to Toledo, 1983, with a plan that sounds clean and turns out monstrous. Stop the one-night stand between the parents of Jessica's supposed killer, Wes Gilliam, a bartender and a stewardess, so that the killer is never born. Erase a murderer before the murder. Wyatt keeps trying to keep the couple apart, keeps failing, and finally chases the bartender out into a tornado, where the man trips over debris and falls to his death. Wyatt did not pull a trigger, but he went back in time to end a life, and he tells himself it is justice. While they are gone, the enemy is realigning. Emma has joined Flynn and Anthony, and she tells them the truth about what Rittenhouse actually wants the time machines for. Flynn wants to keep hunting Rittenhouse across history. Anthony wants something bigger and cleaner, to destroy both machines and end time travel entirely. Anthony quietly tells Lucy his sabotage plan, and Lucy carries it to Christopher, and the 2 women agree to keep it between them. Right as Lucy learns Connor Mason has been dealing with her biological father, Benjamin Cahill. Then Wyatt and Rufus come home to the cruelest possible result. Jessica is still dead. Killing Gilliam's father changed nothing, which means Gilliam was never her killer at all. Someone else did it. The 2 other women Gilliam murdered in the old timeline were saved, so it was not for nothing. But the one death Wyatt built the whole crime around still stands. He is taken into custody for stealing the lifeboat, his grief now on the record, and the closing shock. An explosion at the mothership's location, but no debris from the machine itself. Anthony's body is in the rubble, shot at close range. Christopher and Rufus understand at once. Flynn found out about Anthony's betrayal, killed him, and escaped in the mothership. The alliance of the accused is dead. Lucy walks into Cahill's office to confront her father about Rittenhouse at last. Wyatt is in a cell for stealing the lifeboat, so Lucy and Rufus jump without him, saddled with a new soldier, Master Sergeant Dave Baumgartner, a stranger where their friend should be. The date is May 21st, 1927, the day Charles Lindbergh finishes the first solo flight across the Atlantic. Flynn shoots the spirit of St. Louis out of the sky, takes Lindbergh hostage, and plans to kill him over the aviator's ancestral ties to Rittenhouse. In Paris, they cross paths with a young journalist named Ernest Hemingway, who throws in to help them search. Chasing Flynn's people, Emma and a man named Carl, outside a nightclub headlined by Josephine Baker, Baumgartner is killed in the gunfire. Their brand new soldier, dead almost as fast as he arrived. So a drunken Hemingway volunteers to be the muscle, to Lucy's complete dismay, and the mission staggers on with a novelist for a bodyguard. Flynn captures Lucy and threatens to kill Lindbergh unless she talks the man out of Rittenhouse. Rufus and Hemingway drop into the Paris catacombs and pull Lucy and Lindbergh out, and Lindbergh chooses to disappear into hiding. It feels like a permanent scar on the timeline until Lucy checks a history book and exhales. Lindbergh only lay low a few weeks before walking back into his fame. History bends and then snaps back into place, the way it keeps doing. The bigger damage this week is at home. NSA agent Jake Neville takes over the whole time machine program and shoves Christopher aside. Their protector is gone. Wyatt escapes custody after Christopher secretly secretly slips him a paperclip, a small act of loyalty from a woman who has just lost her authority. Lucy and Rufus come back to find a stranger running their lives, and the episode ends with the four of them, Lucy, Wyatt, Rufus, and Christopher, meeting in the dark of an Oakland warehouse, no longer employees of the program but fugitives from it, planning what comes next on their own. Agent Neville gives an order that finally makes the whole team's stomach turn. Go to 1962 Houston and erase Flynn by killing his mother, Maria Tompkins. Murder a woman to unmake her son. Rufus and Lucy refuse in the only way they can. They steal the time machine and link back up with the escaped Wyatt. The three of them had meant to use the machine to finally save Lucy's sister Amy. Instead, they pointed at Flynn again because he never stops and jumped to 1931 Chicago. There, Flynn is helping Al Capone dodge his tax conviction in exchange for a sit-down with the Chicago mayor and Rittenhouse member William Hale Thompson. The team joins forces with the lawman Elliot Ness to bring Capone down, and Ness is gunned down by one of Capone's hitmen for the trouble, their partner, dead in the street. With Ness gone, they turn to Capone's estranged older brother, a man living as a prohibition agent under the name Richard Hart, a Capone on the right side of the law. Hart gets them in front of Al, who lets slip the thing they need, that Flynn has learned about a Rittenhouse meeting in 1954 before Hart announces he is bringing his own brother in. And then, as a favor to Flynn, Capone shoots Rufus. Hart kills Capone. The mission collapses into blood. Back in the present, the walls are closing on everyone. Gia is interrogated by Mason and Neville, pressed on where the team has gone. And Mason goes to Benjamin Cahill and asks for something enormous: access to NSA data powerful enough to track not just the lifeboat, but nearly any person alive on Earth. Rittenhouse is about to be able to find anyone, anywhere. As the lifeboat powers up to jump home, Rufus, bleeding from Capone's bullet, loses consciousness. The screen goes dark on a wounded man and a machine full of fugitives, and the finale is one jump away. The lifeboat drops into the present with Rufus dying, and Lucy makes her fiancé Noah, a doctor, patch the bullet wound before she finally ends things with him. Then the team, Jaya now with them, jumps to February 20th, 1954, Washington under the paranoia of the Red Scare. Flynn is blackmailing Senator Joseph McCarthy for the address of a Rittenhouse summit so he can bomb it and kill them all at once. Arrested as suspected Soviet spies, Lucy and Wyatt break loose and force Ethan Cahill, Lucy's own grandfather, to take them to the summit. And there, in the room with the enemy, Lucy does the thing she has been building toward all season. She convinces Flynn there is a better way to destroy Rittenhouse than a bomb, not murder, exposure. When Gia has a seizure, Wyatt and Rufus rush her home while Lucy stays behind with Flynn and Ethan. Meanwhile, Connor Mason finally does the decent thing, telling Christopher about Cahill's Rittenhouse activities and showing real remorse for ever putting Rufus in danger. In the present, Lucy and Wyatt visit an elderly Ethan Cahill, who hands over decades of documented records on Rittenhouse, and the team starts using them to arrest the organization member by member. Lucy gives Flynn the name of the person who ordered his family killed, a last mercy, and then Christopher arrests Flynn on the spot, promising to keep her word and help Lucy restore Amy. Lucy feels sick about it because putting the original timeline back means her mother Carol will be dying of cancer again. So she does the bravest thing left. She goes to Carol and confesses all of it: the time travel, the erased sister, everything. And Carol does not flinch. She listens, calm, and then she tells Lucy the truth that turns the whole season inside out. She is a member of Rittenhouse. The enemy has been in Lucy's own kitchen the entire time. In the same breath, across time, Emma Whitmore, also Rittenhouse, walks into the hangar and steals the mothership. Flynn was never the war. He was a man caught in it. The war was always at home, and it just took the wheel. Season 1 ended with the floor dropping out. Lucy's own mother, Carol, sat her down and calmly announced she was Rittenhouse. Emma stole the mothership, and now the cabal finishes the job. They bomb Mason Industries to the ground. Only a handful crawl out: Wyatt, Rufus, Gia, Connor Mason, and Agent Christopher. She hides the survivors and the battered lifeboat in an abandoned military bunker, and the whole mission changes shape. They aren't chasing Flynn anymore. They're hunting ghosts. 6 weeks pass. Lucy, believing Wyatt and Rufus died in the blast, has done the unthinkable. She's embedded inside Rittenhouse, standing beside her mother, playing the loyal defector. Her real plan is a suicide run. Kill the target, blow the mothership, go down with it. Carol takes her and Emma to a French battlefield in 1918, guns still going, to retrieve one specific wounded American soldier. To dig the shrapnel out, Lucy recruits Marie Curie and her daughter Irene, wheeling in one of Curie's mobile X-ray vans. The little rigs the French nicknamed Petites Curies. Emma pulls the metal free. Then a second soldier sees a defibrillator work its impossible magic, and Emma wounds him and forces Lucy to finish him off. A loyalty test written in blood. It's a killing Lucy will carry for the rest of the war, and one she later confesses to Wyatt, because some weights don't lift until somebody else helps you hold them. The lifeboat flies again. Wyatt and Rufus jump to the same mud, very much alive, and drag Lucy back toward home. On a dead operative's body, they find a smartphone and a manifesto, and the horror lands. Rittenhouse isn't just attacking history, it's planting sleeper agents inside it. Ordinary people seeded across the centuries to rise up and rewrite everything from within. Lucy's cover is blown out there in the mud, and Emma wants her shot on the spot. Only Carol's orders keep her own daughter breathing. Wyatt trades Lucy for the wounded soldier and hauls the man to 2018. And here's the gut punch. The soldier is Nicholas Keynes, Carol's grandfather. Lucy's own great-grandfather, a man who predicted time travel back in 1910 and wrote the very gospel Rittenhouse now follows. Back in the bunker, the losses stack up. Emma tells Lucy that her erased sister Amy is gone for good, made permanent on Carol's orders. Lucy and Wyatt almost kiss, and Gia walks in. And down in a cell sits Garcia Flynn, the old enemy, refusing to speak to anyone but Lucy. They squeeze Flynn for intel and get a name: Ryan Millerson, a sleeper agent active in 1955. Wyatt, a NASCAR man to his bones, knows it instantly. So the team drops into the Southern 500 stock car race in Darlington, South Carolina. Millerson's mission is ugly. Rig his race car with explosives, ram it into the stands, and wipe out the assembled bosses of the Detroit auto industry in one blast. Kill the executives, leave American manufacturing headless, and let Rittenhouse walk in and take the wheel. But Millerson is a cracked man, a true sleeper who went and fell in love anyway, married, and now has a pregnant wife. He wavers. Emma keeps him on the leash the only way she knows, threatening to put a bullet in that pregnant wife if he backs out. Even Emma flinches at her own threat. To get inside a segregated sport, Wyatt bonds with Wendell Scott, the real black driver and former moonshine runner. Kindred spirits, the two of them. Wyatt lets slip his own buried past, a teenage drug smuggler under an abusive father before he ran and joined the army. They trade moonshiners slang that leaves Lucy and Rufus lost. Rufus keeps throwing Scott a modern nod that only confuses the man, right up until the end, when Scott finally nods back. The hour can't resist the real history under the fiction. That NASCAR itself grew out of prohibition liquor runners who learned to drive fast by outrunning the law. Scott drives the race of his life, wins clean by 2 whole laps, and walks away with nothing because no one in the 1950s Deep South is handing a trophy to a black man. In the chaos, Wyatt is forced to kill Millerson, takes the wheel of the bomb car himself, and Rufus defuses the thing before it can blow. Then Rufus burns his forearm on a jet of hot engine steam, and Gia goes cold because she saw that exact burn in a vision, her first premonition to come true on screen. She says nothing, and the season's dread quietly takes root because her worst vision is Rufus dying. In the present, Connor Mason can't stand the disgrace and sneaks out to speak at a tech conference, and Christopher's agents drag him back. Nicholas Keynes settles into 2018 by painting, bossing Carol around, and printing out the whole of Wikipedia because the screen hurts his old eyes. At the end, he pulls back a curtain on a sweeping mural of his master plan, finally impressing Emma, while Carol watches and looks quietly afraid of how far her grandfather means to go. The mothership drops into 1941 Hollywood, and the target is a movie. A Rittenhouse sleeper named Lucas has stolen the only work print of Orson Welles' unreleased masterpiece, Citizen Kane, hidden under the codename RKO-281. The scheme is patient and poisonous. Hand the reel to newspaper king William Randolph Hearst, the man Kane so cruelly mocks, and in return Rittenhouse gets a weekly column in every Hearst paper in the country, a propaganda pipe running straight into the American mind, feeding it for decades. To get the film back, Lucy, Wyatt, and Rufus fall in with movie star Hedy Lamarr, who turns out to be a genuine inventor hiding behind the glamour. Rufus goes undercover as the poet Langston Hughes sits across from Paramount president Barney Balaban and cheerfully claims he wrote Hamilton. and when asked to recite something, paraphrases the theme from The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Lucy floats through a studio party in a gown lifted from Katharine Hepburn's turn in the Philadelphia Story. The team works the Hollywood machine and Hearst's orbit, hunting one strip of celluloid through parties and backlots. They get the print back and kill the propaganda play, and Citizen Kane survives to reach the world. But the lasting change here is a kind one. Rufus, knowing what Hedy Lamarr really is, urges her and composer George Antheil to renew their patent on frequency hopping. The signal technology the episode swears underlies modern Wi-Fi. She takes the advice, renews the patents, quits acting, and builds a tech company that leaves her worth over $30 billion. A rare mission where the team's meddling hands an overlooked woman the fortune history stole from her. It's a lighter outing, drenched in old Hollywood, thick with the running gag of the team dropping pop culture names decades early. Lucas even gets teased about a dinosaur film he's calling Jurassic Park. But under the champagne, the season's engine keeps turning. Rittenhouse isn't just killing people now, it's after the story itself. The flow of information, planting a columnist to slowly poison the well of what a whole country believes. Assassination was the old game. Now they want the narrative. The team splits, and both halves ache. In the past, Lucy and Rufus travel with Flynn, the enemy now riding along as a teammate, to Salem in 1692, the witch trials at full boil. Carol has gone there to accuse a headstrong young woman named Abaya Franklin of witchcraft. The name matters more than it looks. Abaya is the future mother of Benjamin Franklin. Hanger, and one of America's founders, is never born. Carol raises the stakes and accuses Lucy and Rufus too, dragging Lucy in front of the court, and real trial figures like Magistrate John Hathorne and Judge Samuel Sewall. A rescue of one woman turns into a fight for all the accused. The team tips the scale, and the Salem witch trials bend into what the show calls the Salem Revolts. The condemned women live, Abaya survives, Franklin's birth is safe, and the timeline holds. Meanwhile, in the present, Wyatt slips out of the bunker to face something impossible. His wife Jessica, murdered years ago, the loss that made him who he is somehow alive and walking around 2018. This is the season's other bombshell. Rittenhouse traveled back to 1980 and erased the man who killed her, so the murder simply never happened. Wyatt finds her, and everything he thought he knew tips over. Right when he'd finally been ready to admit he had feelings for Lucy. He'd spent years chasing a way to save her. Now, she's just there, ordinary and alive, and it undoes him. But Jessica's return is a trap moving in slow motion. Rittenhouse didn't give her back out of mercy. They restored her to aim her at Wyatt, and threw him at the whole team. The kindest gift he's ever been handed is the sharpest weapon they've ever built. The two halves of the hour rhyme on the same idea, the past reaching forward to decide who gets to exist at all. In the bunker footage, Nicholas sits watching a video of Woodstock, calmly studying the future he means to remake. Wyatt, Rufus, and Flynn jump to 1934 to save a teenager. A Rittenhouse sleeper, planted as a high school English teacher at the Choate School, means to murder a 17-year-old John F. Kennedy before he can ever grow into a president. The math is cold. Kill young Jack, and Kennedy never wins in 1960, and Rittenhouse man Richard Nixon takes the White House in 1961 instead, a decade early. The team stops the killing, but with more Rittenhouse agents closing in, they do the only thing they can. They knock the kid out and haul a bewildered teenage JFK back to the present for his own safety, which gives the episode its comedy of errors. A confused 17-year-old Jack Kennedy loose in modern San Francisco. He bolts from the bunker and wanders the city, and the whole team has to round him up and get him home before his absence tears a hole in history. It gets worse. When the 1934 attempt collapses, Emma is sent to just kill Kennedy in the present instead. So the team is guarding the boy on two fronts at once. And during his days in 2018, Kennedy learns about the curse waiting for his family, the long line of tragedies, including his own death in Dallas on November 22, 1963. Rufus, unable to keep his mouth shut, warns the young man to never go to Dallas. It half works, in the cruelest way. History bends just enough that Kennedy is still assassinated, only now in Austin instead of Dallas. The timeline flexes and refuses to break, hammering home the season's grim rule. Some endings are stubborn, some things are simply fated. They get Kennedy back to 1934 and set history roughly right, and the dread keeps tightening. Rufus, more resigned every week to the death Gia foresaw. Flynn, steady and prickly at the team's side. The group closing out another day of triage against a Rittenhouse that keeps finding fresh places to push. Two shifts reshuffle the deck first. Rufus and Gia bolt a fourth seat into the lifeboat, and Flynn, sprung from his cell, becomes a full traveling member. Wyatt stays back at the bunker on a separate intel job against Rittenhouse. So the jump crew is Lucy, Rufus, Flynn, and finally getting his ride, Connor Mason, a shameless blues fanboy. They land in 1936 Texas, where Robert Johnson, the king of the Delta Blues, is cutting the recordings that will change music forever. Rittenhouse has sent men to murder him, and the stakes are the whole future. Kill Johnson and you strangle rock and roll in its cradle. No rock, no 60s counterculture, no soundtrack for civil rights, no wave that eventually helps topple Nixon and end Vietnam. Rittenhouse wants that entire chain reaction erased before the first note. The team races to guard Johnson through his historic sessions. Flynn kills the assassin sent for him. In the aftermath, Lucy coolly introduces herself as Taylor Swift and Flynn as Agent Timberlake, while Mason goes undercover as Lando Calrissian. Johnson lives, and the recordings that seed rock and roll get made, but history takes a bruise. The producer, Don Law, is killed by a sleeper in the fight, so Johnson's sessions end up recorded by Connor Mason instead, credited per his alias as Lando Calrissian. The great blues recordings survive, but with a small fingerprint of the team pressed into the historical record forever. The Hour makes its case that Rittenhouse understands culture as a weapon, that art and Black American history are levers of power every bit as deadly as an assassin's gun. Blow out one man in a Texas hotel room, and you unmake half a century of everything that came after. And under all of it, Jaya's knowledge of how Rufus dies keeps turning, one slow degree at a time, while the man himself hums along to the blues, oblivious. The bunker cracks along its fault lines before anyone jumps. Gia finally tells Rufus about the vision, that he dies, and the truth curdles between them. The next morning, Lucy walks into Flynn's room, and the low boil of hatred between Flynn and Wyatt climbs another notch. Then the mission. Lucy, Wyatt, Rufus, and Flynn follow the mothership to 1919 New York. At first, they fear Rittenhouse means to kill President Wilson and wreck his hand in the Treaty of Versailles and the end of the war. The real plan is quieter and meaner. Frame suffragist leader Alice Paul for the murder of Senator Wadsworth, so she can't deliver a pivotal speech to Wilson, the speech that helps push the 19th Amendment and win women the vote. A sleeper kills the senator and pins it on Paul, and she's thrown in a cell for a crime she never committed. The team works to clear her. Lucy and Wyatt turn up posing as lawyers named Ally McBeal and Johnny Cochran, while Rufus and Flynn bluff a crime scene as detectives John McClane and Hans Gruber. Here a real crack opens inside Rittenhouse. Emma learns that Nicholas's future would keep women as literal property of men, and she's disgusted enough to help Rufus and Flynn hunt the sleeper who framed Paul. A self-interested mutiny, but a mutiny all the same. The rescue only half lands. The sleeper reaches Alice Paul first and murders her in her cell before she can be freed, so history routes around the wound. Grace Humiston, the real lawyer and detective the title nicknames Mrs. Sherlock Holmes, gives the crucial speech in Alice's place. And in this timeline, she's the one remembered for pushing women's rights forward. The cause survives, carried by a different woman than the one history knew. Underneath, the pressure cooker keeps hissing. The Lucy, Flynn, and Wyatt triangle sharpens. Rufus and Jaya wrestle with a death already written. And back in the present, Nicholas and Emma grow closer, an alliance that will matter more than anyone yet knows. The team jumps to March 30th, 1981, sure that Rittenhouse wants to make certain Reagan actually dies in Hinckley's shooting. They're wrong. The target is a young DC beat cop named Denise Christopher, hunted by a sleeper Rittenhouse seated all the way back in 1969. Their own future handler, kill young Officer Christopher, and she never grows up to build the team, hide them in the bunker, and arrest half of Rittenhouse. Erase her, and the whole resistance quietly vanishes from history. While Lucy and Jaya shadow Denise as Cagney and Lacey, Wyatt and Rufus corner the sleeper, a reluctant man named Owen. Owen never wanted any of it. Rittenhouse bailed his family out of ruin, then owned him, and threatened to murder his wife and kids in 2018 if he refused. He gives up his true believer brother, then hangs himself to spare his family any payback. Because Hinckley slips away in the chaos, the team also has to make sure he's caught before he fires again. And on a tip from Lucy and Gia, he's finally taken at George Washington University Hospital, and Reagan's history holds. But the heart of the hour is young Denise. Pressured by her traditional mother and shaken by her brush with death, she agrees to an arranged marriage that would erase her real family before it exists. So Lucy and Gia break the rules and tell her the truth. They're time travelers. Lucy shows her a flash drive from her own future self and photos of the wife and children waiting for her. It works. Denise breaks off the engagement and comes out to her mother, who slaps her. We learn Denise was born Driti Srivastava and renamed herself partly for the kind female officer who comforted her the day her own father was murdered, the woman who first set her on the path to the badge. Then Flynn drops another bomb. In the year 2023, Lucy appeared to him 2 weeks after his family was killed and handed him her diary, which means future Lucy will one day learn to travel inside her own lifetime. In the present, an older, warmer Denise thanks the team. Close now, with the mother she'd been distant from. And Wyatt learns Jessica is pregnant and that her brother, dead at 3 in the old timeline, is alive and is Wyatt's good friend. Lucy, Wyatt, Rufus, and Flynn follow the mothership to South Carolina in June of 1863. The sleeper here is a Confederate colonel named Ryerson, and Emma has handed him a modern military history book so he can read the Union's moves before they make them and drive off Colonel James Montgomery's troops. The goal is to sabotage the Combahee River raid and, above all, to kill Harriet Tubman, the raid's real mastermind, and hand the South a victory. The fix runs on 2 tracks. Wyatt and Rufus work directly with Tubman to stage a plantation raid mirroring the real one, while Lucy and Flynn talk Montgomery into committing his men to reinforce her. And in one of the season's quietest, biggest beats, Tubman trusts Rufus because she'd already seen his help in a divine vision, a vision that, unknown to her, showed the lifeboat itself, binding her faith to the team without her ever knowing why. The raid works. In this timeline, the record calls it the Willow Glen Plantation Raid, but the freedom it wins, and Tubman's part in it, survive. The present pushes toward the endgame. Carol works on Nicholas, selling Rittenhouse to him as a family legacy, taking him to his daughter's grave to argue that leadership has to stay in the bloodline, shoving the common-born Emma back to the margins one more time. Gia meets an institutionalized former pilot named Stanley Fisher, who teaches her she can trigger and steer her visions on purpose instead of just enduring them, a skill about to turn dangerous. And Wyatt makes the mistake that breaks everything. He hides from the team what he's learned about Jessica's brother Kevin, the friend he never should have had, even after Christopher warns him that Rittenhouse has surveilled Jessica her entire life. It detonates at the worst moment. Jessica takes Jaya hostage at gunpoint with Wyatt's own gun and escapes with her aboard the lifeboat, revealing herself at last as Rittenhouse's weapon and leaving the team without their machine. The finale opens with Gia fleeing her captors in the lifeboat, but the machine is damaged and she never comes back. The team is frantic and grounded until they find a clue: a photograph of Gia in a history book about 1880s Chinatown. On one sign in the picture is a message, and it isn't in Chinese. Rufus, a Trekkie under all the Star Wars, recognizes it as Klingon, coordinates for the abandoned lifeboat, and a warning: don't come. Thrown off course, Gia had landed in the 1880s and used a photo studio to write a message forward through time that only Rufus could read. They find the lifeboat in the woods outside San Francisco, overgrown after 130 years and still shot up, and Rufus and Connor coax it back to life. Then Wyatt, Lucy, Flynn, and Rufus jump to 1888. At the photo studio, a shootout erupts, and in the Rittenhouse camp, Emma finally snaps. Sick of being a servant to the royalty, she guns down Carol Preston and Nicholas Keynes and tells Jessica the two of them run Rittenhouse now. Lucy watches her mother die. Carol's last words are regret that she didn't pull Lucy in sooner, and an admission that, dying of cancer in the first timeline, it was arrogant to think she could cheat death at all. They find Gia, who has survived 3 years working a saloon and is furious at Rufus for ignoring the warning, because her vision showed this is exactly how he dies. When the attack comes, Gia manages to avert the vision and saves Rufus from the knife inside the saloon, and then the reprieve turns cruel. The moment they step outside, Emma shoots Rufus and he bleeds out and dies. Lucy chases her but can't pull the trigger, Flynn saves Lucy, and Emma escapes. Wyatt can't shoot Jessica either, who reveals she truly is carrying his child. The team comes home in pieces, grieving Rufus, and then a second, upgraded lifeboat materializes beside their own. Out step an older Wyatt and an older Lucy from the future, who say they've come back to save Rufus. It's the cliffhanger that fan pressure forced NBC to answer. The movie picks up on that frozen frame. Future Lucy, hardened now, and future Wyatt, wearing a beard and a decade of war, climb out of their remodeled, autopilot-rigged lifeboat and hand present-day Lucy her own journal. The answers to saving Rufus are inside, written maddeningly sideways. The future pair can't stay. Crossing into her own timeline splits future Lucy's head, with pain. Gia asks the obvious thing. If your future selves are so brilliant, why not just tell us what to do? Because the rules of time never allow it. Chasing Emma's newest sleeper, the team drops into Gold Rush, California in 1848, a western of horses and dust and shootouts. The standout is Flynn, who bonds with Joaquin Murrieta, the real outlaw who inspired Zorro. Murrieta's blood crusade for his murdered family mirrors Flynn's own, but the once vengeful Flynn, the man who shot Lincoln and once shook hands with Nazis, tells him violence only breeds more pain. You can measure how far he's traveled in that one sentence. Studying the journal, Wyatt works out the thread. Jessica has to be removed from the timeline for Rufus to live, and he insists he should do it. But while the others sleep, Flynn takes the mission himself. He flies the lifeboat back to 2012 and kills Jessica before Rittenhouse ever recruits her, sends the empty machine home to the team, and stays behind on purpose. Partly to see his murdered family one last time, partly because the side effects of the jump will kill him anyway. His life for Rufus's. And it works. Rufus comes back from the dead with no memory of dying. Sure, he's only been running around with Zorro. The reunion is joyful and hollow at once, because he doesn't grasp what his death cost, or the 3 years it cost Gia. The reunited team takes one last mission to North Korea in December 1950, where Emma has parked the mothership to bait them into dying in the snow. It nearly works. They're stranded in killing cold as Chinese troops close in around the real, little-known SS Meredith Victory and the Hungnam evacuation, which carried over 14,000 refugees to safety, the largest sea rescue by a single ship in history. They meet young Kai, a pregnant woman who won't leave without her missing husband and son. And Lucy, who spent 2 seasons guarding history from change, finally lets the rule go. What's the point of saving history if we don't save the people in it? They bring young Key along, with Wyatt playing wartime midwife, delivering her baby as the shells come down. Wyatt's brush with death shakes it loose at last. Lucy tells him she loves him. All that matters is right now, she says, as they shelter in a church waiting to die. When Christopher arrives in the mothership with a captured Emma, Emma offers to help Lucy bring back her sister Amy, and Lucy refuses. She won't trust Emma, and she won't become her mother or Flynn chained to the past forever. Then Chinese soldiers shoot Emma dead, and Rittenhouse is finished. And then the show does the rarest thing. It ends, on purpose and completely. Connor Mason destroys the mothership, killing his own creation for the good of everyone, while Christopher locks the lifeboat away under guard. Rufus and Gia move in together and start their own tech company, pulling a new generation of young inventors up behind them. Lucy goes back to teaching, now telling the stories of the women history skipped, and marries Wyatt, and they raise 2 daughters named Amy and Flynn for the sister she lost and the man who saved them all. One loop is left to close. Lucy, Rufus, and Wyatt take the lifeboat back to Christmas Eve, 2014 in Sao Paulo, and Lucy hands the grieving, freshly bereaved Flynn her journal. She tells him he was right all along, that he has to keep going no matter what people say. "You are a hero, I promise." That single moment lights the fuse on the whole series. Flynn stealing the mothership, and the show flashes back through its own history as the loop snaps shut. The very last shot is a wink, not a threat. Agent Christopher's young daughter, alone in her bedroom, sketching plans for what looks unmistakably like a time machine. Here's the strange, lovely thing about Timeless. It got canceled twice. NBC pulled the plug at the end of season 1, and the fans revolted so loudly the network brought it back. Then it got canceled again after season 2. And once more, the fans refused to let it die quietly, until NBC gave in and let the show return for a finale to end the story properly. That's why this ending exists at all. Not a rushed cliffhanger, not a fade to black with the questions left hanging. A real conclusion, fought for and won by the people who loved it, and the story earned it. 3 strangers, a historian, a soldier, and an engineer, spent 2 seasons watching a shadow cabal try to rewrite the world, and paid for every save in grief. They lost a sister, they lost a mother, and for one terrible night, they lost Rufus. Then they rewrote their own lives instead. A marriage, 2 daughters named for the fallen, a future none of them were ever supposed to get, a canceled show that fans dragged back from the dead, about a team that dragged its friend back from the dead. Fitting. If you want more full series recaps like this one, go ahead and subscribe. We've got a lot more history left to get through.